It's been a little over a year now since the release of Jak and Daxter on the PlayStation 4, and truth be told, this is a video that I didn't want to have to make, but I feel it's necessary. Now before you all go down into the comments and start typing things about the title of the video and this and that, I don't want to make this video. Let me be very clear about that. I'd rather be making videos about how fun and awesome the Jak and Daxter games are, strolling through Sandover Village, enjoying the great scenery, or whatever. I'd rather be making fun videos that show how good these games are, but I just can't do that in good faith. And part of that are the feelings that I have been having since these games came out and even before that. What I have been feeling is this loss of respect and trust in Sony Interactive Entertainment, since they were the ones who ported these games over to the PlayStation 4. Now I don't know if Naughty Dog had any involvement when the decision was made to bring these over, but how these games were handled, to me at least, was nothing more than a quick buck to shell out of everybody's pockets regardless of the quality of these ports. But after 15 months of the Jak and Daxter games being out, after seeing the transformations they have gone through from day one till now, after seeing what little updates that were made, it feels like some of these games will always, in some way, be broken. Like it's always in this constant state of disrepair and in the back of the minds of those working on them. It's like one example when Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy came out, there was this major texture glitch that occurred when players switched from 50 to 60 Hz. Though the NTSC version was unaffected, it was an issue that was present in the PAL version exclusively. This caused the game to become somewhat unplayable, and when a patch was sent out to fix this problem, it fixed that issue, but it also caused people's game to crash at certain parts of the game and literally made it impossible to complete with a 100% completion. Like, did Sony Interactive Entertainment not test this before it was released to the public to work out all the bugs and glitches? I mean, this is just amateur stuff. How can I trust you and respect you as developers when you clearly show that you can't make an 18-year-old game play and run smoothly on a superior system? It's just baffling to me. And it's like, do you ever wonder why people lose their trust and respect when such simple bugs are present? When it's quite obvious that this game wasn't given the much needed testing it deserved to avoid these kind of issues? Do you see why I'm losing trust? And that's just one example. Now when Jak 2, Jak 3, and Jak X Combat Racing released just 4 months after the Precursor Legacy, things were actually worse. Now Jak 2 is probably the one that suffered the most out of all the games with the most obvious and noticeable bugs and glitches. One of them was exclusive to the PAL version, which made Jak run about 16 to 17% slower, and this made the game unbearable at certain parts, especially during the spider run where you played as Daxter. You had issues with popping textures on the Precursor architecture and the Precursor Oracle, noticeable grids in the water at the slums and Haven Port, audio ripping during cutscenes, the boosters on the back of the zoomers were not aligned right, horrible frame rate during certain sections of the game, massive texture glitching similar to the Precursor Legacy, core shockwave glitch that covered the entire screen. These bugs and glitches were present in both PAL and NTSC versions of the game, and this was how the game was released. And it's like, how can I trust you? How can I respect you when such obvious bugs are present in the game? You step back so far with these games that they are now a shell of their former glory. Now, let's move on to Jak 3 and Jak X Combat Racing, and surprisingly I didn't notice much of any problems with Jak 3 besides some frame rate issues, graphical problems, and the boosters not being aligned to their vehicles. And as far as I'm concerned, these issues didn't have a huge impact to my overall experience with the game. But when it came to playing Jak X, I immediately noticed tearing within cutscenes, the music ripping and out of sync, boosters obviously weren't attached to their vehicle, and the camera having this zoom effect when playing and when the game was paused. Like, how can you take 4 months, not properly test these games for the problems that they may have, and fix them before releasing them to the public? You charged players $14.99 per game, and the bundle at $39.99, and yet you gave us a bunch of broken titles. Like, this is ridiculous. I would have at least been happy if these games were simply pushed back, given more time to work on them, to work out all the kinks and at least get them to play as good, if not better, than their PS2 counterparts. If anything, you should have just re-released the HD collection in 1080p, with the addition of Jak X getting the same treatment, and fixed the issues that the HD collection had instead. Then maybe you wouldn't have to deal with all these issues that were present in these ports. If anything, I feel that a major factor to why these games alone haven't been the best is because of how Sony handled their way of doing backwards compatibility on the PlayStation 4. And when you look at how Microsoft implemented theirs, I'm quite surprised that as a competitor that Sony did not try to do the same. With Microsoft, they listened to their fan base and now are able to place their Xbox 360 discs into their Xbox One and simply install the game that way and play it without being charged. And on top of that, Microsoft has even found a way to further improve the overall quality on some titles, like Halo 3, an Xbox 360 game, by making them look more beautiful than they did ever before. And yet here we are, we have a collection of games that can barely run properly on an 8th generation console, and that's filled with all these bugs and glitches. Now, there has been updates since the release of these games, and within the confinements of these updates, there has been some level of progression done to fixing these games. Days after the release of Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy, I mentioned before that there was this patch that literally made the game impossible to play for the PAL version of the game, and a few days later after that, another patch released that fixed that issue, and for that I commend the team for fixing the problems. The same with Jak 2. Days after the release, there was an update to fix some of the issues that the game had, but again, there were still problems that persisted and has yet to have been resolved. Both Jak 3 and Jak X has had various bug fixes, which I'm not sure what fixes were done, but in the update history when checking these games, it's very vague and gives no information on what was actually done besides saying bugs fixed or more bugs fixed. So the best way to figure out what was actually done, you need to load up each and every game just to check out on the areas for which issues were present during that time. Now, if you really want to see a good example on why fans are losing their trust and faith in Sony, I can't think of a better example than this. Here we have Venice Beach Gandalf confirming that there is a patch in the works that will help out the Jak and Daxter collection. But oh look at the date of the tweet, 1 year ago, and just recently we got updates to all 4 games. It took them over 1 year to actually get updates out for these games, and to my surprise, they did manage to fix some of the issues. The only problem here is that it mostly fixed the stuff in the NTSC version of the games, while the PAL versions still have most of the current issues that were present 1 year ago. How am I supposed to respect you when your games are so broken? These games are just so unprofessional, and it blows my mind that it took them over a year just to release patches, and not only that, it made matters worse. And now they need to be fixed, and they are fixes that need to happen, and they probably won't ever happen because the Jak and Daxter collection for the PS4 has always been in this constant state of disrepair and dysfunctionality. How is it that these games are still a buggy mess? Please, someone tell me, because in my mind, I'm just going crazy right now, and it's like, I don't want to say that I've lost trust and respect because I still have faith, and I don't want this to become a battle of us versus them, you know? I just don't want that. What I want is to make videos that are fun. I want to make videos that are positive and great, but sometimes I just can't do that. Sometimes I just have to be real, guys. There was a video made by Boomer where he discusses his opinion on these new updates, but little did I know it actually made matters worse for those who owned the PAL versions of these games. Jak 2 still has graphical glitches and some bugs, and the game still crashes whenever you try to skip out of the final cutscene. But the most interesting of these glitches is one that was present in Jak X, where in the PAL version of the game, spawning in certain vehicles will have them appear without tires attached to them. And when you actually go and try to use the vehicles in a race, the vehicles will still be without those tires, putting you into a position until the race is over. Even though this was fixed just recently, it was still a concern either way. It's even been noted that players' games have been incredibly unstable and has had the game crash constantly whenever they even tried to start up some races. This stuff is just mind-blowing, and this is something that I just needed to get off my chest because I want to be able to create fun videos. Though I do enjoy pointing out the flaws and trying to make things better, all I really want is just to be happy with these games. If you ever wonder why people are losing trust, losing faith, losing respect, it's because of these reasons. Because of the games themselves are always in this constant state of disrepair and dysfunctionality. New updates come out, but parts of the game become even more broken or new glitches are introduced that are never fixed. It's just a continuous cycle of distractions to the overall experience that you, Sony Interactive Entertainment, are trying to offer me. It's unprofessional, it's distracting, and it's unfair that this is the level of treatment you are giving the Jak and Daxter franchise. These are just raw feelings that I am having, the things that are just coming off from the top of my head, why I'm losing trust, faith, and respect in Sony Interactive Entertainment. and I just had to vent my feelings about it because it's been bugging me for a long time now. I want to see these games function. I just want to be able to sit down and play these games without being distracted by all this unprofessional crap that's going on, distracting me. I just want to be able to focus on the good stuff, and sometimes I just can't do that. And it's sad for me to say this, but I can't recommend these games to anyone, not until these bugs and glitches are fixed to a point to where the games themselves play better than the current state that they are in. So with that being said, if you have an opinion on what I talked about, leave your comments down below and let's have an open discussion on the current state of these games. I want everyone to know that I'm not hating on the Jak and Daxter franchise, but rather how Sony as a company has handled them. The games are enjoyable, but there are still a lot of little things that add up that bring the overall experience down a bit. To me, all 4 games are still completely playable and enjoyable if you can overlook a lot of the minor things. I also wanted to give a lot of credit to Venice on how open he has been with the current condition of these games when asked about them, and how he is willing to partake to find and correct these problems whenever they pop up. Overall, the games are still enjoyable to experience, but let's hope that soon that the issues that still remain will be nothing more than a distant memory.